Dr. Neal Barnard, MD, is the president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine and an associate professor of medicine at the George Washington University School of Medicine in Washington, D.C. He is a badass. Dr. Barnard has led numerous research studies investigating the effects of diet on diabetes, body weight, and chronic pain, and has authored more than 70 scientific publications, as well as 18 books, including the New York Times bestsellers Power Foods for the Brain, 21-Day Weight Loss Kickstart, and Dr. Barnard's program for reversing diabetes. His newest book, The Cheese Trap, came out just earlier this year. If you haven't read any of his books, I highly recommend reading all of them. As president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, Dr. Barnard leads programs advocating for preventative medicine, good nutrition, and higher ethical standards in research. He received his medical degree from the George Washington University School of Medicine, and he practiced at St. Vincent's Hospital in New York before returning to Washington to found the Physicians Committee. I absolutely love talking with him, and I hope that you enjoy. So, today we are here talking about cheese, and I love this topic because from my experience, when people go plant-based, cheese is, one of the hardest things to give up. So before we did this, I went in my private Facebook group and I just kind of posed a quick question to the group. Now, these are people who are either like transitioned to plant-based or who are kind of leaning in that direction. And I just asked them, hey, when you think of the word cheese, like not plant-based cheese, but regular dairy cheese, what comes up for you? And the list of answers were pretty amazing. And it's a testament to was a really important book for you to write. Yeah. So some of what they said, now keep in mind, this is coming from people who don't eat cheese anymore, but still here are some of their answers. So somebody says, I'll never not love cheese. I won't eat it, but I still love it. Somebody says, right. Cheese, why is it so hard to break up with you? Grilled cheese sandwiches, I miss them. I know it's horrible for my health, but oh my God, I love cheese. Smooth, creamy, melty, yumminess, comfort, addictive, happiness, so delicious. I miss it so bad. So this is all stuff coming from people who no longer eat it, but yet they have this like romance, this really romantic notion of it. So let's start with people who still eat cheese, kind of a reason why they should reconsider.
Yeah, well, first of all, you're making my point. Is when people talk about they talk about it the way alcoholics refer to their last drink.
Yes, exactly.
It's not like, oh, what an amazing fresh bowl of strawberries I had. Wasn't that nice? Yeah. It was, I need it. Don't take this away. What actually got us into this was years ago, NIH funded us to test diets for diabetes, and we tested a completely vegan diet versus a more conventional diet. Mm-hmm. And the vegan diet was dramatically better. People lost more weight, their cholesterols fell, their blood sugars fell. They did great in every way. Mm-hmm. However, I kept hearing people say, not everybody, but a number of people would say, I really miss cheese. And it wasn't ice cream, it wasn't yogurt, it wasn't even a steak, it was specifically cheese. Mm-hmm. I thought, what's with that? It smells like old socks. Why do people get hooked on this stuff? So we started looking into it, and we found really three things. Number one, it is clearly fattening. Mm-hmm. Number two, it contributes to a surprising range of health concerns. And number three, it does seem to be habit forming. Mm-hmm. And so that's the reason I wrote The Cheese Trap. But you said, okay, a person is not consuming cheese. Can I give them something to get their attention and make them concerned? Mm-hmm. Let me give you a couple of things. First off, cheese has hormones in it. Mm-hmm. Dairy products contain estradiol. This is an estrogen. Mm-hmm. And if researchers went into, well, first of all, the cow's body makes estrogen. And the reason is that cows are pregnant most of the time. Mm-hmm. A dairy cow doesn't give milk until she has been impregnated and she gives birth, and then she gives a lot of milk. Right. And so every year the farmer impregnates the cow, mm-hmm. Up until about age 4, thereabouts, and then the farmer decides she's not worth it and he sends her off to become hamburger. Mm-hmm. But 9 months out of 12, dairy cows are pregnant. And a pregnant cow makes a lot of estrogen, and especially in the later parts of her pregnancy, that estrogen gets into the milk, and the milk is concentrated in to make cheese.
Right.
And so you're getting traces of hormones.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm quite prepared to believe that those are small.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
However, researchers in Australia looked at a group of women, and those who were the milk drinkers had more estradiol in their blood compared to the women who didn't drink milk. And if that sounds attractive to anybody, keep in mind, this is what we're concerned about with breast cancer risk,
right.
is hormones contribute to a lot of issues, and breast cancer is among the more worrisome.
Mm-hmm.
Researchers in Rochester, New York, looked at men, and they specifically looked at fertility issues. And you might think, okay, men are eating cheese, they're getting hormones, female hormones,
mm-hmm.
and they found that the big cheese consumers, the cheese-consuming men had the lowest, the worst fertility, the lowest sperm counts.
Uh-huh.
So, okay, we love cheese, but let's say you love your 6-year-old daughter, and you suddenly start thinking, how much estrogen do you want her to have
mm-hmm.
on her pizza
mm-hmm.
or in her sandwich?
Mm-hmm.
Or you look at your 6 or 7-year-old son, and you think, okay, here's some chemicals for you, not just any old chemicals, but specifically female sex hormones. That's the first thing. And the second thing is it is fattening. Your average American consumes 35 pounds of it every year. That's 60,000 calories.
Wow, that's, yeah, amazing.
That's a lot.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a lot.
And to speak to the people who made this transition, the average person on a vegan diet compared to an ovo-lacto diet,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The average difference, the average weight is about 15 pounds difference.
Uh-huh.
The vegans are slimmer or leaner.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going to say most of that is because they're not eating cheese.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there are lots of other things too, but that's, I think, a big contributor.
Yeah, so that's huge. And I think that's so good for people to know about the estrogen, because people are always so freaked out about soy when cheese and milk isn't ever a concern. So I'm really happy to hear you put that out there, and that's definitely something for people to consider. So let's talk about the people who have...
Before we go away from this, soy does not contain estrogen.
Right, right.
Just 30 seconds on this. Soy contains isoflavones. And isoflavones look somewhat like estrogens, but when people have actually, when researchers have put this to the test, we have many, many studies now. Women who consume the most soy have less breast cancer risk than women who avoid soy. And women who have had breast cancer in the past, if they consume more soy, it doesn't make the cancer come back. It makes it less likely to come back.
Exactly.
So, that's completely the opposite of the paranoid things you'll see on the internet and what some well-meaning but ill-informed bloggers will write. Soy does not cause cancer. No, I'm not pitching soy. You don't have to have it, but it's totally optional. But it is not an estrogenic compound. It's kind of the opposite.
Yeah, actually, an article just came out in I believe the Washington Post this morning, all about that. So that's starting. It seems like people are starting to pick up. Yeah. Yeah, I just
good.
saw
I
it
can
in my
retire now.
Excellent. Your work has been done. Yes.
Oh, my work here is done. Yeah, excellent. Okay, great.
Yeah, I just had an interview with them. I did an interview with Brenda Davis not long back, and she went into a lot of those details, and it's just so important. So people need to give soy a break, and let's just focus on the dangers of dairy. Well,
if you think about it, soy is a bean.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a metabolizing animal, but a cow is pregnant. Estradiol is key to that. She secretes it in the milk, and when you concentrate it in cheese, it goes along with the fatty part.
Yeah.
So, it's a hormonally active substance.
And it's extremely processed, right? So you take the milk, and that's processed down, and then it's such a concentrated form of milk, basically, is what it is.
Yes, but I got to say it was pretty processed even before it came out of the cow. Think about what happens. You're having cheese because you need calcium or protein. That started out as grass. That's where the calcium was.
Absolutely
right. You feed it
so
to the cow. The cow is a ruminant animal. It's got to go bounce around in the intestinal tract, fermented by bacteria. Then it's finally absorbed into the blood. It's excreted into the milk along with hormones and cholesterol and so forth. And then it goes to the dairy where it's fermented by bacteria. Rennet is added, which is either from the stomach of a calf or more commonly now it's genetically engineered. Almost all cheeses uses genetically engineered rennet. And then they add a truckload of salt to it, basically. And there's, even if it's artisanal, beautiful cheese from the heart of Wisconsin, it is heavily, heavily processed stuff that only seems normal because we grew up with it.
Yes.
Mother Nature can't figure it out.
Right, exactly. So let's talk now about, so people who have kind of transitioned away from it, or who are attempting to transition away from it and find it really hard. Like they're always, like you said earlier, it's like an alcoholic thinking about that last drink. It's like they're always kind of thinking about it, and it's there, and they picture that mouthfeel. And so tell me why it's so hard to give the stuff up.
There are really three parts of it, I think, that make it habit forming. The first is salt. We love salty things. And the amount is surprising. If I take 2 ounces of potato chips, they're very salty, 330 milligrams of sodium in 2 ounces of potato chips. 2 ounces of cheddar, 350. 2 ounces of Velveeta, 800. So it's very salty. It's also fatty, and that fatty, salty thing, that's what gets us into onion rings and French fries, and we just love that combination. But there are proteins in milk that called casein, casein. The casein protein breaks apart to release mild opiates called casomorphins, casein-derived morphine-like compounds. They pass into your bloodstream and pass to the brain, and they attach to the same receptors that any other opiate, like morphine or heroin, would attach to. And they're not as strong as morphine. The most potent of these has about 1/10 the receptor binding power compared with pure morphine. So it's not enough to make you drive funny, but it's more than enough to make you think, I want cheese, I have to have cheese, don't take away my cheese. That's not the old sock smell talking. I think that's the casomorphins talking.
Right. So the same kind of effect that babies have when they're nursing, that feel good, that happy kind of milk high that babies get.
Well, we think we think that may be the point of it. Is I and many others have said, what the heck are opiates doing? They're specifically in the dairy protein. They're coded right in the sequence of it.
Right.
And what we think is happening is that if the baby did not want to nurse, the baby would do very badly. So the baby gets protein and sugar and fat in the breast milk, gets a little bit of hormones that aren't going to do much harm because the baby's going to be weaned. And the baby gets a little feel good, and a nursing infant collapses into slumber after their nursing is done. And we think, isn't that beautiful? You just drug the kid, basically.
Right. So. It's nature's drug to keep the kid eating, but nature didn't intend for adults to drink the stuff from huge mammals. So,
well, there are some things that are addicting, and it doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, addicting isn't necessarily bad. Caffeine, for example. If you have a morning cup of coffee every morning, you are addicted, and you know it, because if you don't have it, you feel rotten, or at least you crave it. But coffee the health effects are pretty modest, really. And then there's some things that are fatty, but not addicting. Like lard. I mean, nobody ever sat down to a bowl of lard and just ate it, hopefully. But cheese is fattening and, I'm going to say, addicting. So a person who says, I can't give it up, I really need it, that's a person who is also struggling with weight. And you see this with any kind of addictive stuff. A person is addicted to alcohol, and it's taking a toll on their marriage. A person's got a problem with illegal drugs. It takes a toll on their work, on their social life, all kinds of things. Addictions always have side effects, even coffee. I mean, you feel rotten when you get out of bed until you get your hit. And cheese has lots of side effects, weight gain, inflammatory conditions that come from it, and lots of others.
So when did you stop eating cheese?
1984.
I was 4 years old. 1984. So that was a long time ago, and I mean there was no books like you put out at that point. So what prompted you to do it at that point?
It was sort of the latest step for me. Years earlier, I worked in a hospital in Minneapolis called Fairview Hospital, and down in the bowels of the hospital basement was a morgue. And that's where I worked. And whenever anybody died, I had to help the pathologist do the autopsy.
Mm-hmm.
And one day we had a guy who died in the hospital of a massive heart attack. And the pathologist came in, and he knew that I was going to medical school the following year.
Mm-hmm.
So he made sure I saw every single thing. And he cut the ribs off the chest of this heart patient, the man who died of a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
And he showed me the atherosclerosis, and it was very graphic. I'll spare you the details.
Thank you.
At the end of the exam, he leaves the room, and I have to clean up. So I picked up the ribs, and I put them in the chest, and I sewed up the skin and cleaned everything up. And I went up to the cafeteria, and they were serving ribs for lunch.
Oh my God.
And I got to tell you, I didn't know about health, really. I didn't know about animal rights or the environment or any of these things people talk about now when they're talking about cheese or meat. I just thought, this smells like, it smelled like the dead body, and it looked like the dead body. And I suddenly thought,
it doesn't make sense.
it is a dead body.
Right.
And I didn't become a vegetarian right away, but I just couldn't eat. I could not eat it. And as time went on, I got more and more attuned to this. And then I started learning about all the other things that you know about, whether it's the health issues, the environmental issues, and the issues about animal welfare.
Uh-huh.
But I want to tell you, this was 180 degrees the wrong direction for me, because I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota,
Uh-huh.
and I never met a vegetarian.
Yeah.
I never heard about any of this stuff. And I hunted as a kid, and my extended family, I come from a long line of cattle ranchers. I mean, I drove cattle to East St. Louis myself.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway.
So you weren't really slotted for that growing up necessarily. It was a surprise for you.
This was a new world for me.
Yeah.
But anyway, as time went on, I learned more and more about it. And then I started medical school. And it does not take long before you realize that cheese is not healthy stuff. And I stopped eating all animal products at that point. And for me, that didn't feel extreme. It felt like the beginning of really exploring foods in a serious way, because from there you can look at macrobiotic foods and raw foods, and you can try. For me, it also coincided with, here I am in Washington, D.C., which compared to Fargo, we got everything.
Yeah.
You know, you got Sichuan food and Hunan food and Thai food and Ethiopian food and Vietnamese and everything. And I was just in heaven trying these new, beautiful, delicious foods. Yeah. They're plant-based, but they're from wise, clever cultures that figured out how to make stuff that was a million times better than the roast beef, baked potatoes, and corn that I grew up on in Fargo.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a great exploration, and I have never looked back. And for anybody who feels they have to have cheese on their pizza, to me, now it looks like glue or something. It doesn't attract me anymore at all.
Well, it's almost like a non-food. You know, it does seem really foreign when you're out of the woods with it. And I agree.
Yes, but initially a person can't imagine what you're talking about. What do you mean I need cheese? And then it's like cigarettes. It's like I used to smoke when I was a kid, or when I was a young adult.
Yeah.
And you can't imagine life without a cigarette until you stop smoking, and then you can't imagine what you were doing, and you're glad to be free of it.
Yeah, you're so thankful that you took that leap, and that's so true. I went vegan in 2008, but it's really interesting because when I was eating like the vegan kind of faux cheeses, you know, like diet cheese and stuff like that, I was still really thinking about it a lot. And it took me kind of moving to the healthier plant-based diets when I kind of gave up that processed stuff, before I really didn't want it anymore. And and you know, there are delicious cheeses. My friend Miyoko Shinner has Miyoko's Kitchen, and she makes these fantastic cheeses, or Kite Hill is a wonderful cheese, or there's a wonderful one called Tree Line made by Michael Schwartz. But all of them will, and I talk about them all in this book, they will also tell you that this is not a food group. They will say, hey, wait a minute. It serves two functions. The first function is it's methadone. So if you're hooked on cheese, this is gonna help you to get away from it while you're on your way to simpler foods. Yes.
The other function is you're having a party and you're having these things out there, and they're nibbles. Yeah. You don't have a huge glob, they're these little nibbles. And there's no estrogen in them. Yeah. There's no casomorphins in them. There's nothing you're embarrassed about. They're made, some of them are made from cashews. Kite Hill is made from almond milk. using the cheese making process, but they start with almond milk, so there's no move there.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great thing for people to discover when they're first transitioning. I think that they play a part and they can be really helpful. For people who have kids, so I don't have kids, so this isn't an issue for me, but I see a lot of people who struggle with kids who maybe their parents first started out on kind of a standard American diet, but as their parents kind of transition away from it, they have their kids who, well, now their kids are kind of hooked on it. So do you have any kind of words of advice for these parents who are going through this?
Yes, I do. The first thing is be a parent. Many parents will say, well, I want them to have choice. I want them to have choices. I don't want them to feel alienated from their friends. Don't do that. If your 8-year-old kid said, Mommy, I found this pack of cigarettes, what you would say is, thank you, give it to me. Take it away and throw it in the garbage. You're not going to let your kids smoke it at home, and you're not going to let them drink when they're underage. And if they come in saying, do you want to do a line of Coke, Mom? The answer is, you've got a problem. Yeah. And the reason we're comfortable saying no is because we have a culture that has reinforced this for us, and we have had a chance to think this through. But if you're discovering a plant-based diet on your own, and even though you know it's terrible for animals, for the environment, and for your health, and even your kids' health, because our culture hasn't quite gotten there, a lot of parents are unsure. Should I really enforce this in my home or not? And the answer is do it. Your kids can make that choice. When I was a little kid, my mother decided no more whole milk in the house. We're going to have skim, okay? And at first we thought it's blue. It doesn't look right. It's all watery. But then she said, look, kids, this is not up for discussion. This is the way it is. And within about 3 minutes, we figured out what the story was, and that was it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you could make more and more changes. The issue comes up then, well, what about kids who then go to school and they see what other kids are eating and so forth? And that's true with lots of kids who are either the vegetarian kid or the kid keeping kosher, or the kid who says, I can't eat pork in my religion, or kids have all these issues. What you can do is help them out. You can talk with the cafeteria manager if there are choices there, or if not, you just send them a bag with plenty of good food for them, and maybe even something to share with the other kids. And you can, this is where sometimes the substitutes are really good.
Yeah.
Because you can have a sandwich that's got bologna and cheese on it, but is 100% vegan.
Yeah.
And that kid doesn't really stand out from the crowd.
It's not going to be that weird kid with a weird lunch.
You don't have to do that, but you can.
Yeah.
So you will be rewarded with the healthiest kid in the school.
Yeah.
And whether kids rebel or not, don't worry. If you really love your kids, and whatever rebellious things that will happen, that's going to go away.
Yeah.
And they're going to really appreciate this. And also be honest with them. Let them know why you're doing this, and share this with them. Kids are often very animal oriented. A 16-year-old boy is not worried about prostate cancer. He doesn't have a prostate so far as he knows. He'll figure out that later. But they are animal oriented. They're environmentalists, and you let them know. And you can watch. There's a million fantastic movies out there. Watch them together.
Yeah.
And your kids are going to keep you on the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
If you were tempted, they're going to say, "Mommy, we don't eat that."
That's true. They're going to keep you honest. Yes.
And it's great for everybody. And if you got a reluctant spouse who's not so sure, have him or her watch Forks Over Knives or Eating You Alive, or all the wonderful movies that are out there now. So, What the Health. There's so many great movies out there now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was that weird kid. I was raised vegetarian my whole life, and I was that strange kid with the weird lunch, but I turned out just fine, and it'll be okay. So,
not just fine. You turned out better than all the other kids, So
healthier, yes.
Well, if people don't do this, what happens? Their kids, as they reach adulthood, have a 2 out of 3 chance of being overweight or obese. The boys have a 50-50 chance of getting cancer at some point in their lifetime. The girls 1 in 3. The risk of Alzheimer's is about 50% by the time they're old. You can't stop all that, but you can stop a lot, a lot of it, and it starts with eating habits that we convey to kids and reinforce. You do it with love, but you can do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I hope that everybody gets your book, The Cheese Trap, How Breaking a Surprising Addiction Will Help You Lose Weight, Gain Energy, and Get Healthy. I haven't read it yet because my copy is in the mail and I should have it this week, and I can't wait to dive in. So thank you for writing this book. I already know it's going to be great based on all your past books that I've read. And I really thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with me.
So the Cheese Trap is, of all the books I've written, I think it's the quirkiest, funniest, kind of most empowering one, because it tackles this weird topic and it's got a funny side too.
Yeah,
So
awesome.
have fun with it. Try the recipes and let me know what you think.
Yeah, I will. And it's a very specific topic, which I think is great. So thanks again for your time and thanks for doing this. And I can't wait to read the book.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right. Have a great day. Bye.
All right. You too. See ya.
Thanks.